Please welcome to the stage, Chris Roberts.
Good morning, everyone. It's probably a bit early for all us game developer style people, but I'm glad you got out here early. I hope you like what you saw. That I'm actually pretty proud of it because it was all rendered in the game engine and using the game assets. So that it was the sort of thing that we could only do in pre-rendered sequences. And not that long ago, when I did the Wing Commander movie, we had to have millions of dollars of SGI machines to do that, and that was all done on a PC with a GTX 670 in real time, which is pretty cool. And in case you don't believe me, we're going to jump into the game engine a little later on, and I'm going to sort of show you some stuff in it and show you some stuff that I think is pretty cool. But before then, I thought I would have a little conversation with you and tell you why I'm coming back, kind of why I took a little bit of a break, and I'll sort of tell you the big picture of the game that this past year I've been in sort of super secret pre-production and prototyping, which is what you've seen here. And sort of tell you about kind of what I'm planning to build, and hopefully invite you guys to be part of that process going forward. So let me get my super handy clicker here to move this on. So I think you guys know that when I sold Digital Anvil to Microsoft back in the very beginning of 2001, I took a break from the game business. There was several reasons, but one of the big ones was that I was sort of frustrated with the technology of being able to realize sort of the picture of the vision I had in my head. And then also there was the ever-increasing development cycle. So most of the Wing Commanders I made I built in about a year or 18 months. But Freelancer, we were sort of 4 years into production. And Microsoft bought the company, and it was still another 2 years before it came out. So sort of 6 years between releasing and people getting to play the game that you've been working on sort of was feeling too long, and I was fairly frustrated with that. And then there was also just an element of the business was getting sort of big and corporate, and you had to be more about being part of a big company. And I sort of enjoy making games, and so I sort of felt like I wanted to take a break. But it didn't mean that I didn't love games. And actually, the interesting thing is I probably got to play a lot more games when I stopped making them because I had some more spare time. So I've always been playing games. I've always had the newest PC with the newest graphics card and the whatever the new console is. A couple of years ago was sort of the first time that I was playing games and feeling like I actually have something to say again, and I'd like to come back and make a game. And I sort of felt playing it on a couple of things. One, I sort of felt like the technology had moved forward to a point, and also I could see where it was going to go, that you could do stuff in terms of the visual fidelity that would just increase the immersion. And so for me, all the games I've ever built are always about creating a world and a rich texture. And to do that, you have to sort of realize it with a fair amount of detail. And I think today, especially if you're focusing on a high-end PC, which I'm doing, you can sort of do that to a level that just sort of sucks you into the world. And I think that's actually one of the things when I was doing films, I sort of you sort of learn is that there's a huge attention to detail, right? So even a film set in today's world, half the time you think those were shot on real locations, but usually they were actually sets that were built, and they have a whole art department, and they've got people that figuring out how to put the little scratches, the ticks, little rivets on the walls and everything, just down to the finest details. So when you watch it, you think it's real and you get sucked into it. And I think that's something that when you're building a world or a game, the more of that you have into it, I think it helps. I mean, I definitely one of the games that I liked a lot a few years ago was Uncharted 2, and I think they did a great job. It wasn't so much that the gameplay itself was wholly original, because it's sort of an evolution of Tomb Raider and a third cover shooter, but the texture of it and the world and the detail, I was completely immersed in. And so at that point I was lost, and it was great. And so the technology being able to let you do that now is sort of, I think, one of the big reasons. And the other reason for me that I'm sort of excited to come back and make games again is I sort of feel like with the shift to digital and the way that you can sort of be connected to your community of people that are playing the games that you make, I think that's incredibly exciting. I mean, I think I was saying one of my frustrations in the old days was that you'd work for many years on a game, and then you would put it on a disc, and then it would go in a box, and it would go out to the store, and then people would buy it, and hopefully they liked it, and then it would all be over after a month, and then you would start it all over again, and there'll be another 2-3 years before you would get to do that again. And that, if you're a creative person, that's kind of gets frustrating, especially the longer it gets. And I think in today's world, when you sort of can be connected and you can sort of build a world that maybe people are playing all the time and there's constant updates, that it's a totally different equation. And I think that you have much more instant feedback. And I think from my standpoint anyway, I think it's incredibly exciting, and it's kind of fun. I mean, I don't know how many of the people in here went on the sort of early teaser site that we put up about 30 days ago, but even on that site, we have been doing 2 to 3 content updates a day. And it's kind of fun. You're sort of doing it live, and you're seeing what people are saying when you put stuff up. And I really sort of feel like that's something that is fun and will be great to explore going forward. And so that was one of the sort of core tenets of me saying, hey, I want to come back and I want to do something to that direction. So here we go. Press my little button. So what am I going to build? So I'm going to build a universe, and the sort of name of the universe, or the community I'm talking about, is going to be called Star Citizen. And it's Star Citizen because, well, citizenship's very important in this universe. You don't automatically get it. You have to earn it. So you can earn it via military duty, like the sort of cinematic teaser that we just showed is from the sort of military side of it. Or you could earn it by performing missions that would increase your civic standing. Or you could just be, an entrepreneur, a merchant, earn a lot of money and buy your citizenship. And of course, in this universe, you don't necessarily have to be a citizen. In fact, if you were a pirate or sort of on the sort of grayer side of law and order, you may not want to be a citizen. But the idea is that there's sort of something that you can attain and work towards. And also, I like the idea of citizenship because I sort of feel like one of the things I want to do with this game is I want to say, hey, you know what? PC games are cool, space games are cool, and I think it's kind of a community. And I've definitely seen it in the sort of Wing Commander fan community. I've seen it in the freelancer fan community. And I sort of feel like, I sort of want to pull a community together and then sort of build a great universe and have that ongoing sort of relationship. And people will be citizens of this universe. It'll be hopefully very cool. But the base gameplay in Star Citizen is it's going to be the style of game that I've built in the past, which is sort of space combat and adventuring in a persistent open universe. So the way I'm looking at it is I sort of want to make one holistic universe that encompasses everything that was great about Privateer and Freelancer, but also what works with that was great about Wing Commander. And so I want you to be able to sort of experience all those things. So it's sort of like you're in a universe that doesn't stop going forward and happening and is a sort of constantly live. But you want to play your single player story campaign off on the side, you can absolutely do it. So sort of the idea is in this universe, for instance, you can sign up for your military duty, which is one of the ways to earn citizenship, and that in essence is playing the single player story narrative campaign that's the Wing Commander experience, and that's the typical branching mission setup that you would have in Wing Commander, because of course if you're in the military you can't just sort of take off and fly off to another planet. It's like you'd be going AWOL. But the idea is that particular experience we're calling Squadron 42, which was sort of what that cinematic trailer was about. And the 42nd Squadron of the Imperial Navy in this universe is sort of a legendary fighting unit. It's very much like the French Foreign Legion. In fact, that it's always in the toughest areas, trying to hold back the sort of alien hordes that are threatening humanity, and they, somehow manage to pull out in, against all the odds. And to actually be accepted into this squadron is a pretty huge deal, and sort of gives you a sort of certain level of status. It would be like being a Navy SEAL or something. So the goal of the narrative campaign is that you fight the battle is very much in a sort of Wing Commander 1, Wing Commander 2 narrative branching style. And then if you manage to succeed at the end, you'll be invited into the squadron. And then when you finish that, you'll be able to muster out. You'll have some credits in your pocket, and you'll sort of have the status of being an ex-member of the 42nd Squadron, and there's a sort of community of sort of ex-members in the universe, and then you go out and make your fortune in the universe, and we'll do another story campaign in a little bit, just much like the Wing Commander mission packs, and you could always re-up for another tour of duty. And then, so you have that, which is sort of the Wing Commander experience, and then you have sort of the Privateer Freelancer experience, which is the typical, you can fly around, venture, buy goods, sell it, trade, be a merchant, be a pirate, be a mercenary. It's sort of up to you. And obviously the goal in that is to sort of build up your wealth and your ship and its capabilities. So eventually there'll be some real estate that you'll be able to buy. But essentially, that's hopefully going to be an ongoing environment that is always changing and adapting. And so I'll get to the next slide. I already talked about Squadron 42. I always get ahead of myself on these slides. Hang on, one more forward. So one of the keys, and I talked about it in back when we were doing Freelancer, was that I wanted to have sort of a dynamic universe that reacted to the players. And I talked about it when we first announced the game in 1999. And unfortunately, a lot of those features didn't end up happening because it was sort of that was the stage 2, and it was released in 2003, and Microsoft sort of started to focus on Xbox games and not so much PC games anymore. So I've always wanted to feel like I wanted to finish that off and do it, the way I wanted to do it. I think the CCP guys did a very nice job with what they did on EVE Online, but it's not the style of game that, the first-person sort of visceral Wing Commander, Privateer, Freelancer style. So that's really important. The other aspect of it is not just a sort of dynamic economy, but it's also to have a universe that sort of reacts to what's happening, what the player base is doing out there. So there's several ways that we're going to achieve it. One of the key ways is that we're going to do sort of micro content updates. So one of the core goals of this universe is not to have a big sort of monolithic content update every 1 year or 2 years, like you see in sort of some of the bigger MMOs. It's to sort of have small updates once a week or once every 2 weeks that are constantly adding things. So like one week you may add a star system over here. A couple of weeks later, you'll do a 5-mission story path over on another side of the galaxy. And the idea is that you've got a content team that's doing that, and you're sort of behaving a little like an old-school dungeon master in D&D, where you sort of, yes, you have an overall goal of where you're going to go, but you're riffing off kind of what's happening out there and what the players are doing, so you're sort of riding into your stories or changing things around a little bit, so the people that are playing feeling like their actions actually have some impact. Or another way to think about it is if you think about the TV model versus the film model. I think that the sort of open world style of game is closer to a TV model than the film model. And that, what I mean is, if someone does a TV series, what they do is they write a Bible and they write 5 or 6 episodes, and then they broadcast it. And then if it's well received, then they get an order from the network and they get to do lots more episodes. But what happens is the writing team on that sort of writing as the episodes have been seen, and they kind of know what the audience likes. So that's why when you see shows, a lot of times you'll see characters get killed off or some characters get bigger roles. That's kind of what you can do in TV that you say can't do in features, because you're sort of live with what's happening. And I think that also can be very applicable to sort of an open world and a universe that I'm trying to build. And I think it can be really great. And to give an example of, say, something else that would be connecting for the people playing this universe. So I mentioned that we would have a star system that would put in the galaxy. Well, we want to actually tell the player base that we put a new jump point, a new star system in. In fact, it would have to be a player that's playing it would have to discover it. So it basically would be an uncharted jump point. And if you've got certain equipment on your ship, or you tend to be someone that wants to be more an explorer, you would be flying near a star, and you would sort of see that there would be this sort of gravitational anomaly, and you'd realize it's an uncharted jump point, and then you could choose to actually chart and fly the jump point, which is difficult. Like be like riding an incredibly gnarly wave on the North Shore of in Hawaii somewhere, and if you manage to get to the other side, then your nav computer has recorded all your moves, and then you can sell it at a great profit back to one of the space corporations that will then just be able to sell it to all the players, and they'll automatically be able to trump that nav point. But the really cool thing is that you'll get to name the star system or the nav point after yourself. So, players that discover the new jump points in the star systems will actually become part of the universe. They'll sort of and I think that's kind of cool. I think just becoming that sort of viral discovery and becoming part of the fabric of the universe is actually really cool. And so those aspects I think are going to make the universe really interesting. And then the other thing that is important is I think the multiplayer aspect, if done right, really is something you can do today that I couldn't have done 10 years ago. And so we're going to do several things. First of all, even on the single-player side, the Squadron 42 side of it, you can play the single-player offline. Single-player, you don't have to be online for it. But if you do play it online, your friends can jump in and essentially sort of be wingmen during missions. And I don't know if many people here have played Demon's Souls, but it was actually a game that I quite liked. But they had a really great approach to the way they were sort of handling this sort of single player / multiplayer. And when you went to take out one of the bosses, people could help you out and join you in, and they would get some bonus and points for it. But we'll definitely sort of have a really cool multiplayer on the sort of campaign narrative side. And then in the open world, we're sort of focusing a lot on how you and your friends can fly together. And so like an example would be if you're flying from one planet to another planet and you get attacked along the way, you get sort of put out into what we call a battle instance. And in this battle instance, we will always save slots for friends of whoever's in the battle instance, so you can sort of put a distress call to your friends list, and if they're close by, they can sort of warp in and help you out. So it's sort of like calling in the cavalry. So think of it like if you ever play World of Tanks or Battlefield, if you get online and you see your friends playing in an instance, you can jump into it, but sometimes they're all full up. Well, what we're sort of saying is we're building it in such a way that we'll always reserve slots for friends so they can come in. And then on top of that, what we're going to do is, and I'll show you, when I'll get into it, I'll show you some of the technology, but we've spent a lot of time building a technology so it's sort of scalable on a spaceship size, so we can handle the small spaceships like a fighter craft that you're flying, but we can also handle much bigger spaceships. So in that trailer you're seeing that you're flying off a big carrier. Well, that's simulated and modeled as a vehicle just like the fighters are, and we can be anywhere in between that. So in this sort of open world universe, you'll be able to sort of buy or fly around a bigger ship. So think a Millennium Falcon style ship where you can have, you'll have the cockpit and you'll have some turrets and some corridors inside it, and you could be flying it and you can have a few of your friends hanging out on your ship as you're flying through the galaxy. So you can say, hey, we're going to fly on a difficult mission. Will you man the turrets for me? And a few of the bigger ones will even have a small hangar bay that will have a fighter in. So if you come under attack, someone can jump in the fighter, someone can man the turrets and fly around. So that's always something I've wanted to do in a game, and you can do it now, and so we're going to be doing that in this. So those are all features I think are pretty cool. And let's go on to the next slide. Guess we'll all need you to enlist here. But so I'm going to jump into the game now because I want to sort of show this is sort of the prototype level that we spent about a year sort of working the workflows and some of the technical issues out. But I want to sort of show some of the aspects of it, and also show you that what you saw in that movie was actually game assets. Okay, so you're up here. So I'm actually on the bridge of that carrier, and walk around. I guess I'll. Oop. Fell down too many stairs. Down more stairs. I guess if I go out the side here, I can sort of show you. You can see out onto the actual main carrier there. But I'm going to cheat and sort of walk myself to the hangar bay really quickly. So here I'm sort of on the hangar bay, and so one of the things that I'm kind of happiest with the sort of level of fidelity that we're doing here. I'll sort of look. We'll spin around, but so my pilot character here. So he's built out of about 100,000 faces. So a typical current gen console game will have about 10,000 faces for a main character. So the difference you get with this is you get all this extra sort of piping and tubing and detail and creases and nuances that you wouldn't be able to get in a current gen style game. And then also if I'm looking around in the here in the hangar bay, the level of sort of detail. Oops, oh, that's good. And prototype was still working, but you're looking around here in the level of detail, but the actual hangar itself is about just under about 2 million polys, and each one of these ships themselves, if we go take a look at it, and I'll get into one to fly, they're about 300,000. So the ships, that's again about 10x what you have in a current gen console game, and it just allows you to have a lot more detail, sort of the paneling and the stuff, and it all holds up really close. But I'm going to go and get into my fighter. Style in, and it wouldn't be. Got to have a cockpit. It's got to be real. It's got to be detailed. So this is kind of what I'm talking about, the level of immersion. I mean, I think I actually was kind of regretted in Wing Commander 4 that we cut the cockpits out, mainly just because we didn't have the time to get them all done. But I mean, the whole thing is modeled fully in 3D, and everything that you do, and I'll get out and sort of show it here in a bit. But everything you're doing will be mimicked inside the cockpit. But, let's try not to kill ourselves. Again, so so I was walking around this cockpit, which is, actually I'll go here. Try not to normally play at this angle, but it's again, it's exactly the same when I was talking about the level of fidelity. So the ship itself, and actually if we fly past, you'll see inside the bridge there is that was the bridge I was wandering around with, and if we get past, let's see if I get it. See all the folks in it or not. It's kind of hard. I'm going to hit this side. That probably won't be so good. But the idea, I mean, the idea would be in the multiplayer side, you literally could be sitting in that bridge, and a friend of yours could get out in a fighter and fly around, and you could wave to each other. And it's all done at that level. So if you sort of notice, there wasn't any loading screen. It all holds up. I'm there in first person or third person at that level of fidelity, and then I get into my cockpit, and I've got let's find some light to show on it, because this is space, so there's light. But so I'm in my cockpit, so if you think Wing Commander style, I move my joystick, you can see me do everything. I can see my feet on the pedals moving back and forth, foot on the throttle, and if I'm changing something around, you'll see my thumb. So every action that you're going to do in the final game, you'll actually do. You'll see your character do it. He flips the switch. You want to turn on it. You want to turn the weapons display on. You'll have to switch. Your character will actually have to switch, and it will come out. So it's all about making you feel immersive. It's sort of like the next step of what a long time ago I did in Wing Commander, where I put you in the cockpit, and instead of saying you were 52% damaged, it was like you would see the cockpit smoking, and you would feel that. But of course, that was much more primitive. It was VGA 320 by 200. This is 1080p with millions of colors. But it's part of it's the level of detail and immersion. If I sort of come out on the ship itself, it's the same. It's like just like little things, so like silly things. But if I'm moving my laser Gatlings around, the wires are all deforming, and if I'm flying, you'll sort of see my vectored thrust on the back that it's all sort of moving. And let's see if I go here, shows a few things. But the idea is, this all the craft that you fly are modeled to this sort of level of fidelity. So this particular fighter has about 300 parts, and about 60 plus of them are all sort of moving. So let's see what I'm doing if I'm should pull out a little bit. Classic Star Wars style stuff, but if we go in here, I'll sort of also deploy my missile bays. And the same thing, you can sort of, if I fire the missiles, I'll fire this on the side. And they're actually all set up very much like a real missile would be. So there's an explosive force, and they go out, and then it sort of hits the acceleration. But it's all sort of the aspect of sort of, the realism. I mean, the same thing, I can sort of punch in, and it's like a level of detail that typically you haven't sort of seen before in at least definitely a console game. It's what you can do on a high-end PC. But let's see if I'll get in closer. Play a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's just if you want to come in right up really close, it's going to hold up all the way in really close, and then if you want to come out wide, I mean, it's the same thing, and the same on the carrier. The carrier itself was, I think the carrier itself is about 7 million polys, where this is about 300,000. So it's just all, that's all what you can do when you're sort of going crazy on the. You're not worrying about fitting inside 512 megabytes and working on 7-year-old technology. So one of the things that I'm kind of like most excited by is the way we're doing the flight model and the sort of physics simulation here. So so just to show you, so like here's my ship, and it's modeled. It's a complete, proper, full rigid body physical simulation, and actually it rotates and it moves and maneuvers around, changes orientation, all like a real spaceship would do. So I know it looks like it's got wings, but basically what's happening is force. Like so, here I'm yawing. You can see the thrusters, the vector thrusters, are all sort of articulating and actually generating forces in that direction. So if I'm going to pitch, you'll see them pitching and rolling and doing all that stuff. Same if I'm like rolling, you'll see the thrust. And so as I'm flying around, what's happening is the ship's sort of fly-by-wire system, so it's sort of set up very much like a F-35 would be, because obviously trying to figure all that out in space, because to actually go, okay, I got to put a force on this part of my rigid body, and I have to put a force over here on this part of the rigid body. I mean, that's just too much for any player to do, and it'd be too much for a human being to do. It's why an F-35 has a fly-by-wire system, because there's no way a real human pilot could actually fly it, because it's dynamically unstable. So the computer's like moving all the control surfaces all the time, and it's basically taking the input of the pilot, saying, okay, well, he wants to pitch, he wants to roll, he wants to go here. And so that the philosophy of that is very much in this. And so what happens is your ship's computer, when I say I want to pitch, I tell, okay, I want to pitch, and the sort of flight computer goes, okay, that means I need to put a force here and put a force here, and it actually talks to all the thrusters on the ship. So this particular one has eight maneuvering jets, 4 on the top, right, and there's 4 on the bottom down here. And so it basically polls them. It says, okay, I need a force over here, I need a force here, and which one of you can get there, and how quickly will it take you, and how much force can you give me? And then all the thrusters sort of give the information back to the flight computer, and the flight computer goes, okay, well, all right, I crunched all the numbers, and I need you to go here, and I need you to go here, and I need you to go here. And what's really cool about that is that in the old school of making a wing commander or a privateer or a freelancer style game, you basically said, okay, this ship would roll at 30 degrees a second, or this would pitch at 40 degrees a second. Well, with this system, there's none of that. It actually doesn't have any conception of like what your roll or pitch is. It's all based on what your mass is, what the thrusters are, kind of how quickly they can articulate, how much thrust they can deliver. And so what's really cool about that is that what it means is when you're, say, in a combat situation and you actually get, you get hit on your front top right thruster, or you get hit on your, back bottom thruster or something, it will have a completely different effect on your sort of flight envelope. So they'll, it's a level of fidelity that hasn't been done before. And the other thing that's really cool about that is that it really plays well into the bigger sort of Star Citizen universe, where you're sort of building and modifying your ship, because it means that you can have like a huge amount of possibilities in how you're building and customizing your ship. And it also means that there's no particular strong, definite, this is how we're going to win build. Because, for instance, to give you an example, you could build a tank of a spaceship with lots of armor, lots of shields, and heavy weapons. Costs you a bunch of money to build that, but someone who's a good pilot may have built a much lighter build that's really maneuverable, and yeah, if you hit this guy, then he'll probably blow up, but it's going to be pretty difficult to hit him. If he's a good pilot, maybe he can get 20 hits on you before you get 1 hit on him, and he takes you out. So there's a very much rock, paper, scissors base, because if you add weight to your ship, it's going to affect your sort of performance envelope. So even just in this situation, if you once you've fired a lot of your weapons or your missiles, you'll be slightly lighter. And we're also going to let you scope into it, so you don't have to do it, but if you want to, you can adjust sort of your power ratios or meters. So you can be in a tight turning dogfight, and you decide, okay, I'm going to take the risk and drop some power to my shields to put a bit more power to my thrusters to maybe try and get an extra degree or so in that turning battle. So I just think because it's built as a system, it's a lot more sort of flexible and also has a lot more combinations. So in terms of an open persistent universe, or even in terms of playing the more Wing Commander style game, I think it's going to open up a whole range of strategies and combat in the in space, right? So I think that's great, and that's something that obviously you can do with today's tech that you couldn't have done when I was making the last games I was making, just because it's pretty processor intensive. But now you've got the horsepower to do it. So let's see. I think just for fun, where's my carrier gone? I'm going to bring a few enemy ships in. But this part's the sort of very final bit, so the full combat stuff's not all the HUD and everything isn't fully in, but I thought it'd be fun to sort of see all the ships attacking the carrier, much like you saw in the sort of cinematic sequence, which was obviously a lot of this, but staged with nice, taking the best shots for it. Yeah. So it's the same level of detail on the on the big carriers that you have the same thing. I mean, the carrier actually has got I think this particular carrier has 115 turrets on it, and of course they all move, they all articulate. I think there's 4 different types. There's the AA gun. There's a sort of a bigger sort of heavy duty ship to ship one, and then there's the equivalent of a Flannex sort of point defense system, and there's a missile turret. But again, like I'm saying, I mean, this is, if you saw this cinematic sequence, this is all the same stuff. It's the same assets and everything else. And let me see if I can get. Fortunately, this is the bit where the HUD. Daisy. My HUD. Yeah, I'm going to get killed at somewhere if I go around that. The full HUD targeting stuff isn't actually integrated in yet, so. It's kind of hard for me to see who I'm shooting. He's going faster than me. That's not fair. Alright, well, I was hoping to blow one up for you, but I think they've all kind of run away. We've got about 15 minutes left, and so kind of what I wanted to do was take some questions and sort of. And just before I was going to do that, I was going to talk to you about kind of why I'm sort of showing what I'm showing now at this stage, because I'm actually showing you a build maybe a year before you typically would do so. So in the old-fashioned sort of typical publisher model, you would basically spend another year working on this, and then you would go to E3 and you would do a reveal. And then you sort of have your last year. You'd lead up to releasing it. But part of what I'm trying to do here is one, I'm coming back to make a game. I'm very focused on making it about PC. I feel like the games that I made in the past were obviously at the heart they were always PC games. I felt like one of the things that Wing Commander and the other games I made was all about sort of pushing what you could do on the PC and sort of showing sort of the aspiration and the dream of it all. And I sort of felt like over the last few years, especially as a player, I kind of feel like as a PC gamer, I'm kind of underserved. I can either play ports of a console game. So I mean, I have a console, and if a game was built for console, I buy the console version. I don't buy the PC port of it because I'm getting a port of something that was built for 7-year-old tech. So I don't feel like people are really pushing the PC like they could. I think there's a lot of I guess they're coming back to attack me. A lot of PC gamers that sort of feel like they would like to get. That's my guess anyway, that they would like to get something that really kind of shows off or pushes the hardware. And there I died and got killed by the nasty enemies. I put this together in a way that I can make it sort of outside the traditional publisher system because most of the big publishers aren't very interested in building a PC-specific game, and they're also not particularly that interested in building something that's a sort of space sim game because it's a genre that hasn't been big for the last 10 years or so. I tend to think that the genre can be as vibrant and valuable as it always has been. It's just that there hasn't really been anything that's been particularly compelling recently, and so that's kind of what my goal is, to sort of come back and say, hey, I'm going to do a PC game like the old Winkman as I did, which was if you've got a great PC, this is really going to show it off, and you're not going to be able to get this experience anywhere else, and it's going to be immersive, and it's going to be a great game and everything else. So as part of that, I've put together a group of private investors, but as part of my deal with that is to validate that people want this kind of game, want a high-end PC game, not a sort of free-to-play or a social game, that we're going to do an element of crowdfunding in addition to the financing, because obviously this is a much bigger budget than you would have in a typical small sort of crowdfunded game. But what the concept is that we're going to have a sort of limited number of the people that really like this and really sort of believe in this be part of the process much earlier than you would normally be. So you would, you in essence come in and sort of pre-buy your spaceship, and then you're part of you're getting a lot more. You're basically involved in the development process in terms of seeing what's actually going on and really being informed. Which I think if you've looked at the Roberts Space Industries site, it's we definitely do that, and we're going to be doing more of that going forward. But you're also going to be playing the game and builds much sooner than you would do if you're not doing this. So the full timeline to get the full big persistent universe and everything out is about 2 years. But about 1 year into it, we're going to have sort of the multiplayer build, the alpha multiplayer build that you'll get to play, and then about another 18 months in, there'll be sort of the alpha beta of the persistent universe that you'll get to play if you're part of this early community that's sort of signing up early and saying, hey, you know what, I believe in space games, I believe in PC games, and I'd like to be part of this. And so I'm kind of announcing this now as part of the, I guess, in the old days, this would be my green light meeting with, at EA or Microsoft or somewhere, where I'd say, this is what I'm working on, and this is what I want to finish. Will you guys back me to finish it? And that's kind of what happens at a publisher. They just say, okay, yeah, that looks cool. We think we could sell X million copies, and so we'll back you. And all a publisher really is doing is it's basically saying, I think there's people that will like this and want to pay for it. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, but I'm doing it to all you guys, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're the ones that would be playing it and want to play it. And I'm hoping that a lot of you have want to be in this universe, because I do, and I kind of want to play this game. So so I'm sort of saying, if this is something you're excited by, then please come to robertspaceindustries.com and participate and support us. So that's my pitch. I'm not very good at the pitch side of things, but we have about 10 minutes left, and I thought that it would be good to do Q&A for if anyone has some questions. I'd be happy to answer them. So I'll turn over to the question side. Talk like someone in publishing.
So The maneuvering thrusters, can they be intentionally disabled to do like some of the Starbucks style maneuvers in like Battlestar?
Yeah. I mean, all the different pieces are separate components on the ship, and so they can all be, they're all simulated and they're all damaged and all the rest of stuff. But you can also, it's kind of what I was saying. There's a baseline of it'll fly for you, but you'll be able to sort of switch off some parts. So, for instance, you could like disable them, so you could sort of go on a sort of slide, and then you could turn them back in, and then your ship would take over. So, the idea is there will be lots of moves and strategies in terms of how you dogfight. Because I kind of wanted, it's actually one of the big challenges of a space game is how you, in a multiplayer fashion, add enough like detail and nuance to actually make it sort of challenging in terms of different strategies to achieve different ends. And so that's kind of why I'm excited about that, and you're definitely going to be able to do that.
Just back here. It almost sounds like, and just make sure I've got this right, it almost sounds like you're taking a hybrid approach for the end game between EVE Online, where you've got economy driving things, and then a more traditional MMORPG like, say, World of Warcraft or Guild Wars, where you get to a certain point and then you kind of have access to more story points. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, I'd say so. I mean, I think there's a combination where there's an attempt to try and do stuff on a procedural manner that I couldn't do to the level. So I think you can sort of simulate systems, and if you simulate them really well, they're kind of cool. In the old days, it was pretty primitive in how you'd simulate them, so it wasn't that interesting. Now you can do some stuff, I even think, on the NPC and AI side that could actually be pretty interesting. But yeah, it's kind of a hybrid. So the idea is that you have the big universe that's has a lot of sort of procedural elements to it, and then you're sort of spicing it up here and there with sort of narrative bits that you're dropping in. And it's sort of, I think it's a good combination for me. It's the sort of game I want because it sort of allows you to have the big open world, but then also sort of feels like it's got a bit of a personal touch, which is, for me, that's always important. I sort of feel like you have to be connected to the world to really sort of get lost in it.
Okay, so then to expand on that, I have a coworker who I respect his opinions about MMORPGs very much, and he played BioWare's Star Wars game, and he opined that its major downfall was that once you got to the end game, there really was no content, and they blew through the content, getting to that end game much quicker than BioWare anticipated. So you feel like this dynamic micro update system will kind of alleviate that?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Syndrome?
The Old Republic issue is that, essentially it's an incredibly well executed single player game that millions of people can play. And that in terms of updating content is it's a nightmare. It's great content, but it requires a huge amount of work. So I think you're much better served in being smart about how you set your, like in the case of this, how you set your galaxy up, how you put different factions together, and you sort of put systems in place that, I'll give you an example. That, so for instance, it's not just about having an economy. So we're sort of simulating. The idea is to simulate the galaxy like a real world would be. So, for instance, if you're trading close to Earth and the planet's near there, they're right near the sort of center of the empire, and there's a lot of law and order and sort of military presence. So there isn't really an opportunity for other players to basically do PvP or take out new players. But if you're trading there, it's very safe as a merchant. But when you land, say, on Earth, you'll be paying landing tariffs, and you'll be paying tariffs on the goods you sell, because someone has to pay for the infrastructure, someone has to pay for the law and order that's happening there. Now, of course, if you don't want to do that, there's other areas of the galaxy that don't have the same level of law and order, that don't have any of that. But of course, obviously, they're a lot more risky, because those are the areas that, pirates aren't really, there's no one keeping the pirates in check and everything else. So it's much like, the idea is to sort of simulate this universe like a real world. So there's trades and, there's pluses and minuses to everything. And I think then when you start to do that and you put those tools in a world, then, and you enable the player base to almost sort of help keep it alive and create content, I think that you sort of can avoid the problems that you have with sort of the old Republic. And to be honest with you, I mean, this is a Privateer Wing Commander style, so it's not about getting to level 80 or anything. I mean, there is no idea of level 80 in this style of game. There is basically, you earn money, you upgrade your ship, which is sort of equivalent of your character, and then you can later on buy, say you can get an asteroid mining station, or you can get a private penthouse on one of the planets. But it's not about, okay, I need a rush to get myself to level 80, and then what my end game is. It's a different sort of philosophy, and I think at the higher levels, it's going to be more about putting the players in opposition to each other and creating divisions and rifts between the players and factions in such a way that they'll sort of operate amongst each other, which is what, the thing that EVE Online does very well. That's kind of how they keep that universe going.
I have a technical question about the network traffic that a game like this might generate. In a game like World of Warcraft, you don't have to share that much data between client and server. It's basically like, where's your character and what is he doing right now? But here, you mentioned that capital ship has like 100 turrets, and something like that would have to be disseminated to every client. Have you run into any technical problems getting that data to flow freely and issues like that?
Well, no, actually, I mean, it's funny you mention that, because I would actually argue with you that the setup of this style of game is much easier to do than a World of Warcraft, because in a World of Warcraft, you have whatever it is, 1,000, 2,000 people in your shard, and you've got to worry about all those people being in the same area. So yes, the fidelity of simulating any individual person isn't necessarily as high as something as this, but you've got a lot of them. So this is the way you should think about this on a multiplayer technical side. It's a lot closer to, say, Battlefield 3 or World of Tanks. And the actual intent, the stuff, the combat that you saw here in the multiplayer system, you can't be in a what we call a battle instance with 1,000 players. So it's going to be like a Freelancer or a Battlefield, where it's somewhere between, say, 60 and 100 and something players. But of course, space is big, right? So in the actual galactic sort of server level, all the player base is in it. You're not on different worlds or shards. It's just that if you're flying out in space between planet A and planet B, and the galactic server basically goes, okay, well, you're flying from planet A to planet B, and this other person's flying from this planet to this planet. They've intersected, and they're going to be in conflict. So it creates an instance in space, and of course, space is huge. It's infinite. So there's no way in this system that you say, I'm going to go to exactly this coordinate. So basically, it creates these battle instances, and they exist for as long as the conflict exists, and then it's gone. So just sort of think of the persistent galaxy being more like a really smart matchmaking system built on top of what would happen in World of Tanks and Battlefield, that's sort of keeping track of your overall status, what your location is, what the money you have, and all the rest of the stuff. But the sort of high fidelity, like data traffic for the combat stuff, is sort of in those sort of temporary battle instances. That's much more like a sort of, like I said, World of Tanks or Battlefield.
How do you think it's going to be like near Earth, where it's going to be a very busy system, I would think, as far as handling these high poly art assets, or at least what's very high poly compared to what we see now? When you are playing multiplayer and there's, say, 60 or so characters all interacting in that particular area where it's not creating that instance, that's persistent in your persistent world.
Okay, well, so I mean, here's the other. See, I'm giving some tricks away on the space side, but there's a big advantage to making this kind of game over making a typical, say, first-person or third-person game, is that you don't really have to the environment's pretty cheap, right? It's space. So you spend your processing power, your GPU power on the spaceship or the character, and then the size of the spaceships means that by the time you get in close enough to the 300,000 polys of the fighter you're in or the craft that you're in, it's pretty much filling the screen. So you're not going to be able to have 60 other ones all at that level of resolution all on the screen at once. So what would happen is, yeah, you can have 60 people in there, but if you were close enough on one to have that level of resolution, the other ones are all being rendered at a much, much, much lower level of resolution. And that's sort of the advantage of these big objects, right? So it's different than if we were saying it was a first-person shooter game and we were having 100 or 200 characters running around shooting each other all at 100,000 polys. Yeah, there would be a problem, because you literally could get a lot of these characters all on the screen at once at that resolution, and it would be harder to push that data around. But because you're flying spaceships, and spaceships have sort of size and volume, it's you can't really fit that many of them on screen at once, so you sort of alleviate the technical issue of having too many polys when everyone comes together in the same spot, because there's just so many ships you can fit in a certain volume. That's kind of the way it works.
So you are one of the very few high-profile figures in the video games industry that has started in the video game industry, went to the movie industry as a producer, and now coming back. What would you say is the key thing that you and RSI are bringing to this project that other developers and publishers would say, we have the movie industry experience, and we're bringing the cinematic experience to you in this game. What would you say, that you're bringing sets you apart from those claims?
Well, I sort of hit on it a little earlier. I think the thing that I learned the most when I was, spent about 10 years making movies is that there's an attention to detail, and by the way, it's not on things that you would think are obvious at all. So if you're not really, you're not making movies, you're not sort of into it. You sort of view the sort of high-level stuff, the obvious stuff, but there's a huge amount of work that goes in on a whole bunch of really talented and creative people to put the tiny little nuances and details in, and it is actually those details and nuances that make that world feel more realized, and so then the actor's performance or whatever can live inside it. And I think that on a game side, I feel that bringing some of that attention to detail that you would use in films back into it, stepping it up another level will increase the immersion. Because for me, it's always about immersion. So all I want to do is I want to play this game, and I don't even want to feel like I'm playing a game. I just want to feel like I'm lost in this world. And so for me, it's probably like I said, the attention to detail. And then from a sort of more boring production process basis, there are some, there are aspects of the film business that are silly, and there are also aspects of the film business that are pretty good, and they're very, very good at marshalling a large amount of people in a short period of time to achieve one unified creative vision, and that's actually quite impressive when you're on a movie set and you see 200 or 300 people all operating in unison to deliver a combined vision, and they sort of do it in a very, or even if you think about visual effects in a movie, most of those big visual effects movies, they have 2,000 shots to do, and they deliver them. They finish shooting, and they've got 6 months or 8 months to do all the shots. And that's a huge challenge. In the game business, you do similar work, but you'll take 2 or 3 years to do the same level of volume, and a lot of times it's not the same level of detail. So I think on that side, there's some good sort of techniques to sort of adapt and use. But I fully think that the game business is going to be the sort of entertainment medium of the 21st century. We're just at the beginning of our industry. So, if you look at a film that was made in the 20s, it's very primitive compared to films that are made today, because they sort of evolved from theater, so they're very static and the performance is very big. And then, as you got closer to the 70s, it became more naturalistic. And I think that the game business is just like that. I think we're still figuring out how to engage and how to immerse a player in a world or a universe. And that's kind of part of the fun of it, is to figure out the syntax and language is cool. I think I've got the time is up, please wrap up on the front here.
Sorry, man.
That's it? Oh, apparently our site is having millions of hits and is overloaded. So everyone out there, please be patient. Because hopefully, I think it's worth it. But it's great that there's so many people interested in it, but we'll try and get it back up when I guess we can. So that's it. So thank you, guys.